Welcome to Consortia Small Business Accountants, How to Build a High-Performance Small Business. This is Session 3, Highly Profitable Services and Products. By way of introduction, this session presents how you increase your profit and demonstrates highly profitable services and products. As an example of research and development, I'm going to use Consortia Small Business Accountants. To remind you of the primary business processes, last time we talked about management, and today, of course, we're going to talk about research and development. Next time, we'll talk about marketing and sales. So as far as primary business processes, in the actual flow of the cycle, again, it always begins with research and development. What products or services, or both, am I going to offer those who I want to serve? And again, as far as primary business process results, when it comes to research and development, the whole idea is that we're wanting to increase our profit. Now again, reminding you of the small business problems, typically as we work with small business clients, it's quite common, obviously, that everyone is going to have one or two or three of these problems. That's typical for small businesses. And of course, one of those happens to be profitability. And so if I were working with a client and we just finished their financial analysis and we realize that their profitability, that is their profit margin, is below the standard of the industry that they're serving in, we of course would bring it to their attention. And we would want to provide recommendations to help them increase their profitability. But the answer, 9 times out of 10, is the fact that they're not performing research and development, and therefore their profitability is suffering. So again, the reason for small business profitability, most freelancers, sole proprietors, and LLCs don't perform research and development. So let's begin with the end in mind. There's 4 things I'd like to cover and make sure that we are all familiar with, and basically the process. Number 1, it all begins with identifying your target market. We specifically need to know who are we going to target. Number 2, we research our target market. So we're constantly performing research, as we'll talk about. It doesn't end. Number 3, we want to improve and develop new services or existing services and products for your target market. And number 4, we want to provide services and products that differentiate us or you from your competition. So let's talk about identifying your target market. A target market refers to a specific group of prospective customers, or also referred to as prospects. You direct your marketing and selling efforts to these prospective customers, but you also direct your research and development efforts to these prospective customers. In other words, once again, we start and we know who we're going to serve. We know what we're going to do as far as offering products and services. And so we begin to do so. But we constantly are looking for ways to improve our marketing and our selling to pick up more clients. But we neglect performing our research and development to constantly improve our services and products or develop new services and products. And that's the problem that many small businesses run into. So let me give you a very basic, simple target market example. So we could say small businesses throughout the United States, small businesses using QuickBooks Online ecosystem, small businesses with less than 50 employees, and small businesses with over 100,000 to 5 million in revenues. So that's specifically who we target. So when you perform the research of your target market, research is the process of collecting and analyzing data about your target market and the associated demand for a service or product. The approach is most often used to access the potential of a new service or product offering within a specific market. The objective is to increase your profit by determining what products and services your target market needs or wants and how much they'll pay for it. So, as far as collecting and analyzing data, basically we need to point out several things. Number one, the overall demand for your services and products. That's what we want to know. The general size of your target market. The economic strength of your potential customers. In other words, their buying strength. The demographics of your potential customers. The availability and prices of similar services or products. In other words, with my competitors. Now, as far as research tools that could be used, you could perform surveys, you could perform evaluations, again with your clients or customers. You could perform interviews. You could perform focus groups. You could just look at general observation. And you could look at digital data. Digital data would be an example of that would be like Google Analytics. So as you work with your digital marketing, you work with your website, and the idea is that you're constantly analyzing the Google Analytics of what's occurring with the market you're serving, with your digital marketing, and with, of course, your website. Now, improve and develop services and products. Development is the process of improving your current services or products and developing new services and products that supply the demand of your target market. The objective is to increase profit by improving and developing service and products with a higher demand and a lower supply. And again, remember, this is constant. So, as far as differentiating from your competition, differentiation is where you offer your target market something unique, something different, something distinct from your competitors. The objective is to develop a competitive edge or an advantage over your competition, and I'll be pointing some of those things out. Now, let's begin with what's called the product life cycle. If you were taking an overall basic business class, you would be introduced to what's called the product, or you could also call it the service life cycle. And what that means is, if you look at the products and services you offer, and you ask yourself, which of those are new? Which of those are emerging? In other words, we're selling more. And which of those are mature, meaning that the sales has leveled off? And which of those are declining? In other words, the sales are down. You know, last year we did this much in accounting, and this year we're doing this, for example. Now, thank goodness, when you work in accounting, people are always going to need bookkeeping. They're always going to need payroll. They're always going to need accounting. They're always going to need taxes. So that's what's nice about the industry that we happen to serve. But the point is that many of you happen to offer services or products that, again, are either new, emerging, mature, or declining. Now, the point I want to make is this. The products and services you're working with identify your business life cycle, where you are in your life cycle. So in other words, if you're offering new products and or services, then your business is new. If you're offering you're offering products or services that are emerging, then you're an emerging business. If you're offering products and services that are mature, you're a mature business. If you're offering products or services that are declining, you're a declining business. So the point being made here is that you always want to be in the new, but more importantly, the emerging phase. In other words, if you're in the emerging phase, you're constantly increasing your financial condition, your profitability, your cash flow, and your equity. When you're mature, those things have hit the ceiling. They've stopped. And the best you can do is stay level, but more likely you're going to start declining. So always make sure you're offering new or emerging products and services. So B2B or B2C, B2B, which means business to business marketing So in other words, it depends whether if you work with businesses or you work with consumers or individuals. So marketing focuses on selling services or products to other businesses, while B2C, business to consumer, marketing targets individual customers or consumers. So once again, this is what's important. B2B marketing involves longer sales cycles. So again, if you're providing services to other businesses, the actual from identifying your market to picking up a prospective customer to landing a prospective customer, that process, it's a longer sales cycle with working with other businesses. It's more complex decision-making processes because a business, sometimes partners, have to come to an agreement. It takes longer. And a focus on building relationships with business buyers. That's key when it comes to providing services, especially professional services, accounting services, lawyer services, medical services, those kind of things, okay? So B2C marketing emphasizes emotional connection, broader audiences, and shorter sales cycles. That's the pros and cons of working with businesses or individuals or consumers. So let's take a look at this for a second. So look at individuals or consumers. Now again, I want you to look from our perspective. So we're called Consortia Small Business Accountants. We used to be a CPA firm, and our names were on the door. And as time went on, we began working with more and more small businesses, and we love that market because it's a big market. It's a market that has needs, and we love helping and assisting small businesses. And so eventually we transitioned into Consortia, Small Business Accountants. And so obviously the name alone tells you we only work with small businesses. So the bottom line is this. One of the things that we found out in our research, because again, at one point we were a typical local a CPA firm, and a vast majority of our revenue came from individual tax returns. And as we started picking up more and more businesses as clients, we began to realize, because it was so obvious, that businesses have greater needs. So in other words, instead of wasting our time with an individual, and I probably shouldn't use the word wasting, but from the perspective of what I'm talking about, I hope it makes sense. But the point is that we had the choice of, when you talk about target marketing, should we target individuals? And of course we were. Individuals were coming to us, or we were going to them, and we were picking them up. But we began to realize with individuals, we're only able to offer tax services. And that's just an annual tax return. And so even though it may be a $500 tax return, it's $500 a year. And that's okay, that's fine. That's why we didn't think much about it. But as we began working with more and more business, we began to realize, wow, these people need bookkeeping, they need payroll, they need accounting, they need accounting analysis and business performance recommendations. They need their business tax returns done as well as their individual tax returns. So we gravitated from working with with individuals and then businesses and individuals to only working with businesses. We wanted to specialize not only in business but small business. And thus again the name Consortia Small Business Accountants. And you can see why we made this decision. Now, as far as business owner options, I want to bring this to your attention. Another thing we realized is that a business owner, and I'm a business owner as well as you, a business owner, when they have things to do, which they have many things to do, they only have 3 options to get them done. So if you think about your small business or any small business, the owner or owners have an awful lot to do. And from just the primary business processes of managing the business, performing R&D, performing marketing and sales, producing the work, financing the work, doing customer support, and the cycle goes on and on. There's an awful lot to do. And that's why in the small business arena, many things don't get done. Very imperative things that makes your business a high performance or, quite frankly, a profitable or a high cash flow business. And so anyway, back to this. So the owner has a lot to do. And so the rule we try to teach them is only do what you can do and only do what you have to do. In other words, you can't delegate it to an employee. You can't delegate it to an independent contractor. Okay? And that's the whole reason. So what we're saying here, a business owner has three options. I've got something I've got to do. Should I do it myself? Should I have an employee do it? Or should I outsource to an independent contractor? And of course, it all depends on what needs to be done. So one of the things I learned as a new business owner is that I can't do anything. Excuse me, I can't do everything. And so the point is that I learned that I had no choice. I had to delegate. I had to give things away if I wanted them done, okay? Which of course I did. And so what I tried to do is I literally made a list and said, okay, here's all the things I need to do. So let's go through this list, or I'm going to go through this list, and I'm going to determine what is it that I absolutely should be the one doing it, and what is it that I just can't delegate. And so I went through and picked those things, okay? So for example, let's say you're a very small sole proprietorship. Let's say you're an electrician. And so that means that since you're the electrician and you're the only one there, you've got to do the actual work. So that takes away from getting clients, managing, so on and so forth, okay? And we've talked about that. But the point is that we've got to learn to delegate. And so our theme is delegate, delegate, delegate. So then the question is, of those things on my list that I'm not going to perform, am I going to give it to an employee or an independent contractor? So that's the question. Now, when it comes to the standard accounting services, bookkeeping, payroll, accounting analysis, business tax returns, individual tax returns. So I have to do these things, okay? It's basically required by the government, or if I want a successful company, or whatever the case may be. These things need to be done. I don't have a choice in the matter with some of these things. And so the question is, who am I going to have do my bookkeeping? Who am I going to have do my payroll, accounting analysis, business tax returns, individual tax returns? And so just for your information, I've been a CPA for almost 40 years, and I've never done my own books. I just have better things to do. Now, I'll take that back. In the very, very beginning, I did, but I just got to a point like I've got better things to do, okay? So that's the point here, okay? So the reason why I bring that to your attention is you may find this interesting. So again, as you can see, I'm an old guy. I've been in the business a long time. And so the point being made here is let's talk about what we call small business accounting pre-QuickBooks. In the old days when I started, you found that small businesses spent all their time with their accountant, meaning that they delegated the bookkeeping, the payroll, the accounting, and these are small businesses, everything as I've just mentioned, to the accountant, turned it over to him or her. So that's why in my little demonstration here, the pendulum is swinging towards the accountant. They're relying very heavily on the accountant. But when QuickBooks was introduced, and this was in the early 90s, and they began to gain traction in the late 90s, early 2000s, for example, what happened was they did a magnificent job of basically saying, hey, you don't need an accountant. You can do your bookkeeping on your own with QuickBooks, okay? And so slowly but surely, as time went on, people began to believe that. Now, to be clear here, and this is what I'm going to talk about, and I've actually spoken to the founder of Intuit, Scott Cook, and actually about this very thing, because we were at a meeting, happened to have the privilege to talk to him, and one of the things that was kind of irking me a little bit is that as an accountant, we were losing work, the work that we were doing pre-QuickBooks to Intuit. And so I said, did you really mean to basically take all of this financial information and turn it over to the employee? And so his answer was, no, we didn't. Our intent was to do this. So instead of swinging the pendulum all over to the employee, where they, in a sense, neglect the accountant and only give them their information at the end of the year for taxes, that's pretty much what it came down to. And so what the intent was to say, no, what we were trying to say was, when it comes to day-to-day, invoicing clients, receiving payments, incurring liabilities, and paying our vendors. And so that's what we were talking about. We weren't talking about, see, and just to let you know, a lot of small businesses don't understand, owners, and many do, but some don't. And that is that there's a difference between bookkeeping and accounting. If you looked at the accounting cycle, the steps, it's typically 7 or 8 steps, depending on who you're talking to. Bookkeeping is the first 3 steps. You identify a transaction's taken place, and then you record it, and then you categorize it. And so that's pretty much what a bookkeeper does. And that's what they were talking about. They were saying that an employee and an accountant should work together. In other words, the client's employee doing the books with QuickBooks, and the accountant should work together. The accountant shouldn't be doing the bookkeeping, the day-to-day bookkeeping, and the employee shouldn't be doing the accounting. And so I hope that makes sense. Now, the reason why I share this with you is not that I thought you'd like to know this, but it helps you understand where we're coming from as an accounting firm, as we work with small business clients. We saw this, and we understand this. And so that's why when we sat down and said, okay, as we do our research and development, which we do throughout the year, okay, we're always looking for ways to improve, always looking for new products and services to share. And so instead of going, as many of our competitors do, going to the small business world and saying, hey, we'd like to do your bookkeeping, payroll, accounting, and accounting analysis and taxes. And the owner says, well, we're using QuickBooks, and so we'll do the bookkeeping. And so my attitude is, oh, well, then never mind, because that's, we want you to have us do it. So we realize we need to give them options. And so when it comes to bookkeeping and payroll, we believe it should be in the hands, or can be in the hands, of an employee if they're properly trained, supported, and supervised, which is the accountant's role. So what we said is, look, we're not going to say either have us do it or forget it. We're going to say, number one, we're going to give you 3 options. We can train your employee to perform bookkeeping and payroll correctly. For your information, I would have to say 7 out of 10 bookkeepers who use QuickBooks, employees for a small business, don't understand what they're doing. They may know how to write a check, they may know how to record an invoice, but when it comes to the accounting part, the information part, they've never been trained on that. And that's critical for helping you run your business. So again, we say we can train your employee to perform bookkeeping and payroll. Number 2, second option, you can hire one of our knowledgeable, experienced, and ethical bookkeepers. So in other words, if you're wanting your employee to do it, but you don't have one, hire one of ours. Number 3, we can perform your bookkeeping and payroll. You can outsource it to us. So we don't care what you want to do. It's totally up to you. Whatever works out best for you. So as far as training your employee, and this comes back to products, most accounting firms don't have products. They only provide services. We provide products because of the way we work with small businesses. So what we have done is we put together bookkeeping, payroll, and even accounting, as well as QuickBooks courses that our clients' employee bookkeeper can take. We have invented, basically, certifications. We have a bookkeeper certification, a payroll certification, a QuickBooks certification, because certifications communicate to a potential employer or boss that you know what you're doing, okay? And 3, we have literally written guidebooks, and we update them every year because QuickBooks is updated every year. So what we do is we literally go through step by step on how bookkeeping is done. And so in other words, let's look at the cycle. Let's look at your responsibility. We help them understand the responsibility, what they should look for, are there ways to look for cash flow improvement, so on and so forth. But then we go through. So we've written guidebooks for our employees, our clients' employees to literally go through that guidebook and know how to perform best practice bookkeeping, knowing how to perform best practice payroll with QuickBooks. There's no reason why they can't do it internally. We don't need to do it. And so that's why we help them. So we provide training that goes along with the guidebooks, and we also offer what we call a monthly review. So especially when they first start, if you got a person that's just learning QuickBooks, just learning bookkeeping, you don't quite feel comfortable with them, then we will review their work every month. And we'll go through and analyze how they're doing. Are they doing it right? What are they doing wrong? And we'll teach them, in this you do this, so on and so forth. So we make them better so that you're getting what we would call timely, relevant, reliable information. And number 6, we're always there to support them. It's just part of the service we offer. So again, I'm telling this for 2 reasons. One reason is because this is what our research and development developed over the years. And number 2, because we provide products. I love products. Products are where you're prepaid for it, you deliver it, and you're done. Whereas services are ongoing, improving, so on and so forth. And so that's why we offer both, just for your information. And again, from a research and development standpoint. So as far as hiring one of our bookkeepers, one reason why they like hiring our bookkeepers is because these are people who have worked for us, sometimes years. And so these people have gone through those courses, and just so you know, all those things I mentioned to you to help with our client's employee, we originally developed for our own employees. And so we have courses that they've gone through. We have certifications they achieve. We have the guidebook where we taught them how to use QuickBooks how to do bookkeeping with QuickBooks and payroll with QuickBooks, and the training that goes along with it. And we, of course, give them the experience where we're going through and tell them how to do it, and we're reviewing them, we're supervising them, and then they become what we call, this is internal for us, a certified public bookkeeper or CPB. So if you're going to hire somebody, you might as well hire our people, because you're not going to find anybody who's better than our bookkeepers and payroll people. So let me kind of finish off here, and I want to tell you about the actual outsourced services. And again, what I'm trying to do is demonstrate what research and development can do, and these other things we talked about, your target market, specialization, differentiation. So these are examples of what we're trying to do. So for example, if you were to go to our website and look at bookkeeping, the service we offer, first of all, it tells you have the options, but then if you choose, or at least look at to having to outsource, this is what you'd find. The page would say this: Consortia Bookkeeping Services provide you, the business owner, with timely, relevant, reliable financial information and increases your operating cash flow. We identify, record, and classify, again, those 3 things a bookkeeper does with financial transactions, your daily financial transactions, and recommend and implement enhanced operating cash flow procedures. Bookkeeping is the daily identifying, recording, and classifying of financial transactions such as sales, receipts, and purchases and payments. It's the foundation of an accounting system and critical to operating cash flow, because bookkeeping controls the timing of receipts and payments. Now, what I want to point out to you is this. We've been working with small businesses for a long time now, and we know them. We know them very well. And one reason is not just because we made observations in working with them, but because we literally perform surveys, interviews, group sessions, so on and so forth, looking for feedback. And so that helps us to write and communicate with them. For example, if you look at a lot of our competitors, it would say bookkeeping services, bookkeeping. We do AR, AP, general ledger, fixed assets, that kind of thing. And so we find through our research that small business people not only want to have you do their AR, AP, fixed assets, so on and so forth, but gosh, if you could help us with operating cash flow, that'd be great. Gosh, if you could help us give recommendations to being, more profitable, that's great, that kind of thing. So that's why I'm showing you this, is because this is a result of our research. So again, let me give you a few more examples. So as far as payroll, so what did we find in our research? What's important? And this will stand out. Consortia Payroll Services make your payroll convenient and accessible for you and your employees. So in other words, we just don't say, hey, we do your payroll, for this much. And so our reach has just told us that small businesses, payroll's a pain in the butt and they hate it, okay, especially if they're doing it internally. And if not externally, they have to provide them the information. But that's not the way we work, but that's another story. So we use the word payroll is convenient for you, the owner, and accessible for your employees. You and your employees provide or access their payroll information at any time from anywhere with any device. And again, this is using QuickBooks Online Payroll. It allows us to do that. Payroll is the process of gathering, recording, and processing employer, employee, federal, and state payroll information, payments, and reports. Payroll should be convenient, keyword, and accessible, keyword, for employers and employees. So our research told us this is what they're looking for, so when you write a web page on it, you should be hitting these keywords. So what I'm saying is you too, through your research and development, should be doing the exact same thing. Now, I'll finish off here with we perform your accounting. So Consortia Accounting Services increase your company's business performance. So again, we just don't say, hey, we crank out your financial statements. So we increase your company's business performance, which we do. We gather, analyze, and communicate business performance and recommend strategies to improve financial position, profit, cash flow, and equity. So once again, what's a small business want to do? Well, sometimes if I asked them, they'd say, well, I want to make more money. In other words, I want to make a bigger profit. That's what they focus on. But we're constantly educating through our little videos that we do for our business owners to help them become better business owners. And they begin to understand how important their financial position is from the balance sheet, how important their profitability is from the income statement, how important their cash flow is from the statement of cash flows, and how important their equity is from the statement of changes in equity. So we educate them. We don't expect them to be, financial gurus, but if you have a small business and you're wanting to run it and grow it and become successful, you need to know these basic things when it comes to financial position, profit, cash flow, and equity. So business owners use this information to make informed business decisions. So what we're teaching them is that the whole idea behind accounting is to give you timely, relevant, and reliable information to help you make key decisions. As a business owner myself, I can tell you that you and I make decisions every single day. And some are critical. Some could make or break the business. And so the point is you need to have the proper data to be able to make these decisions on, and that's what accounting does, okay? So when I used to work for an accounting firm, the firm I worked for before I started my own, is where I would give, we would work so hard to produce these financial statements, give them to the client, get paid for them, and they would put it in the desk drawer and never look at it. And I'm like, there's a disconnect here, and that's why we go the extra mile to make sure there's communication of what you can do with this information with our help and assistance. Okay, now the last thing, and again, another example of research and development. And we've been doing this a long time, and so the point is that this has been very helpful for us to pick the clients we want. And so bookkeeping, payroll, and accounting offer. We perform, and you might want to consider this depending on what you're doing, but this kind of thing. We perform your bookkeeping, payroll, and accounting for free for 3 months without business interruption. And as far as business interruption, what I'm saying is that, hey, whatever you're doing now, keep doing it, but allow us to do the next or the last 3 months. Because we want you to compare our services to whatever else you're doing. And whether if it's internal, external, whatever the case may be, you're going to find that ours is much better. Why? Because we do research and we do development and we listen. This enables you to experience our services. So from your standpoint, we've had people say, yeah, I'd like to try you out. I'm thinking about changing, that kind of thing. And so we're like, okay, you can kick the tires with us, not a problem. And us to recommend strategies to increase your financial condition, profit, cash flow, and equity. So the idea is by allowing us to do 3 months for free, then we're able to not only show you, our bookkeeping skills, payroll skills, accounting skills, or whatever it is that we're going to do for you. And the idea is to do that. And then the idea is to allow you to compare us to our competition. And we're going to win every time. And then along with that, let me give you a little secret here. It also gives us an idea if we want to work with that client. Because there are such a things, and I know you know this if you've been in business for a while, there are great customers, there's terrible customers, there's mediocre customers. Now in our business, generating financial information, interpreting financial information, giving recommendations, it's a two-way street, meaning that we have to have cooperation from either your bookkeeper or somebody in your office. We constantly need information. For example, we may be doing your books and see that you're starting to make payments that you weren't doing before. So we realize, oh, they have a loan. So we need to communicate with you and say, can you provide us the loan documents so we can set that up? And I've had clients or in this interim period where we don't hear from them. We don't hear from them. And we're like, we can't fill our role and help you become more successful if you're not, giving us the data that we need to help you do so. And so we won't work with them. And so that's just what we decided to do. So it goes to both ways. It helps us and it helps them. Okay, now finish off this here, tax planning preparation services. Again, an example of research and development. So a lot of small business people, they think about tax preparation. The IRS, the state, they're making me, they're forcing me, they're tying me down. I have to do these stupid taxes. So that's kind of the way they look at it, and I do too, quite frankly. But on the other hand, okay, if you're going to do it, and you have to do it, then let's make the most of it. So again, through our research, these are some of the things we found. Consortia tax planning and preparation services reduce your federal and state income taxes and prepares you for retirement. Whoa, where did that come from? Well, we found that out because we talked to a lot of our better clients and found out that those two things were important to them. And that's what part of tax planning and preparation. And as you'll see here in a second, so we gather tax and retirement information, develop a plan, implement the plan, analyze and communicate results, and recommend improvements. Tax planning is a plan to reduce your federal and state taxes and prepare you for retirement. That's what our client wants to do. Man, if you can have me pay as little as possible that I'm legally obligated to pay, that would be great, okay? And here's what you need to understand. So tax preparation is preparing. So the typical competitor of ours, they do tax preparation. Tax preparation is preparing your tax return after the end of the year when most opportunities to reduce your taxes and prepare for retirement are gone. So it doesn't do that much good other than knowing exactly what you're supposed to pay. Business owners use tax planning to reduce their taxes and prepare for retirement. We keep emphasizing that because our research has told us you need to develop this within your tax department. You just don't prepare returns. You do tax planning and preparation, help people reduce their taxes, help people prepare for retirement. And that is, if we had not asked our clients what they were looking for, what they expected, we would have never known that. We would have been like everybody else. Come do have us do your taxes. Okay. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful as far as what we're trying to say about research and development. Research and development is vital to a successful organization. We're here to make you a high-performance organization, and a high-performance organization has a great and increasingly better financial condition, profitability, equity, as well as cash flow, and that's what it's all about. Okay, now let me finish off here, other business services. Now again, why am I telling you this? Am I trying to sell you on this? No, what I'm trying to say is this is what we learned in R&D. So we also found, we work with small businesses, what other needs do they have? What are the things that we can do for them, which is beyond and makes us stand out from our competition? Well, we do business incorporation. We pick up a client, we find out they're a sole proprietor, we're finding out that they're doing a Schedule C, we freak out and say, first of all, you're going to pay more in taxes, and second of all, if you get sued, you're toast. They not only are going to take your assets from your personal business, but they're going to go to you personally and take your personal assets. And so we do business incorporation. We do business planning. Virtually, you can't go to a business owner and say, hey, would it be good to have a business plan? Of course they're going to say yes. And then if you ask them, do you have one? Most of them are going to say no, okay? And so we have a process that we take our clients through that make it very, very, very easy. They develop a plan in one day. And anyway, so business management training and advice, research and development training, advice, or service, production training, advice, or service, finance, that is the three areas of finance, operations, investing and financing, training, advice, or service. And by the way, on that, so for example, they need to get a new truck or a tractor or a skidster or whatever the case may be. The point being made is that they need to go out and get financing. So we put together these loan packages to ensure and increase the probability that they'll get accepted, okay, and get the financing. We have training we do on that. Anyway, in customer service training, advice, or services. So again, all of what I've presented to you is all based on our research and development and how important it is in helping us to be successful ourselves so that we're able to help our clients, of course, become successful. Okay, so that's session 3. Took a little time here, but a lot of people just don't quite comprehend how important R&D is, and I hope I've been able to communicate to you how important it is and how it can make your difference, make a difference in your business of being highly profitable. So next time we'll talk about marketing and sales. Hope you'll find that interesting. Have yourselves a wonderful day.